Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos to review films, either current or classic. And this week, we're celebrating the classic in a way. Asterisk. More on that later. But before we talk a little bit about what we're doing this week, let me just wish my co-hosts a happy 8th anniversary of the Movie Bears podcast. That's right. We've been doing this for 8 years at this point. Jim Pugliafico, welcome to 8 years of MBP. How the hell are you doing?
I'm doing great. And wow, I can't believe it's been 8 years. I mean, we're still, a few years away from puberty as podcasts go, but we're sailing into year 9. And I mean, this one's going to be a lot of fun. We got a lot of special stuff coming up, so I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too. So much to be jazzed about. Will Lindis is here with us as usual. Will, welcome and happy 8 years to you too.
Hey, happy 8th anniversary Movie Bears podcast, and happy 8th anniversary to all the people who have been along with us on this journey. 8 years. That's the bronze anniversary gift, right? I didn't get you anything, but if I did, it would be bronze.
It's the thought that counts.
Counts for me.
Well, Will, we couldn't do the show without you. So glad that you're here as well. And speaking of people that we couldn't do the show without, we have another gentleman with us this week who helped us really get this podcast off the ground in its infancy. He used to be part of our crew full time. Now he joins us for special occasions. Chris Lopez, sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast. I can't even do it like you do, Chris. There's no substitute. Welcome back. How are you, my friend?
Thank you so much, Brad. So now it's my turn to say happy anniversary to you. And all of you guys. This is an amazing feat to keep the show going for so long and to have seen so many movies. I can't wait to get to the stats to see how many hours you have spent reviewing movies here.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being part of our MBP legacy. We always love having you back on the show. Sometimes, it's a hot minute in between when we get to see your smiling face on camera with us. But so happy to have you with us, helping us to celebrate this milestone event in our podcast. As Chris kind of alluded, we're going to be talking a little bit about 8 years of MBP. We don't want to, pat ourselves on the back too much or anything, but we've got some fun things to share, some fun things to look back on. And then we're going to jump into a re-review of, I think, what we all universally agreed was probably one of the worst movies ever reviewed on the Movie Bears podcast, Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. So it'll be fun to revisit that film and get some discussion going. We're also going to be sharing the Movie Bears podcast Stall of Shame. We've each picked a selection of terrible fucking films from the last 8 years that we've reviewed on the show. I don't know necessarily what's on everybody's list, but I can't wait to see what you guys have picked out and kind of talk through some of those different choices. So it's a jam-packed week here on the Movie Bears podcast. Super stoked to dive right in. Jim, Will, Chris, it makes me so happy I can include Chris in that. Are you guys ready to go?
Woo! I've got my Sharpie ready. We're getting ready to walk into the bathroom stall and carve some real stinkers onto the sides of it. So yeah, no, I'm excited for this one.
Awesome. All right, well then let's get some let's get some stats going. Looking back on yesteryear, I've pulled together a few things you may be interested to know, some things you may already be aware of, some things maybe not. This marks our 390th episode of the Movie Bears podcast. We are 10 short of our 8-year anniversary being episode 400, but that's okay, because as Jim said last week, That means we get to celebrate twice. So episode 400 is coming up. But even though we've only done 390 episodes, we've reviewed 435 films on the Movie Bears podcast. Can you guys believe that? 435 movies?
And that's just the main reviews. That doesn't count if we've done a listicle where we've done like our top 10 this or whatever. You know, a movie that gets mentioned in passing or gets like a short little blurb, or when it's Oscar time and we're buzzing through all of those. That's just 435. We went, we bought the ticket, and then we joined together to like have a full-blown discussion on it. That's a lot of movies.
Right. It doesn't include all the plugs we've pushed, we've done out there. You know, the films we've seen at South by at festivals that you know, that we've talked about. We maybe did like a speed reviews on some of those where we've talked about almost every film we've seen at some of these festivals. So yeah, the 400, what was it? 408. What was it?
435 films.
35. Yeah, going strong. We'll have to make sure we hit, you know, make note of what the 500 is, you know.
What percentage of that 435 do you think you remember?
Oh, okay. Me?
Just the collective you.
Remember
collective
seeing or remember like details? Because we'll talk about this later, but as I was making my list today, I came across some titles and I'm like, wait, what movie was that? Did we saw that movie? And I actually, yeah, we'll talk about that later. But I think I remember well into the 90% of the movies we see. Yeah, of the movies we reviewed. Yeah,
Chris, how about for you? Because some of the movies you saw for the show, I mean, were, you know, 8, 7, 6 years ago. Do you remember that far back to some of those films?
I am getting older, so memory is starting to fade a little bit at that point. But it's like I'll remember sort of broad strokes. But yeah, a lot of the details are definitely getting lost, especially if the movie wasn't super memorable and it was okay. Then for sure, it just gets like pushed aside in the memory bin.
Well, that's definitely a fair point. I think I've experienced a little bit of that myself. I was going back through the list. Will, you have a magical list of every main review we've done up on Letterboxd. So I bow at the altar of your Letterboxd archive skills. But it was great just going back through that list and seeing some of those films. There were several that I was like, what was that movie again? I had to like look it up and I was like, oh, right, that movie. Okay. But it's been a fun little trip down memory lane, along with some other interesting stats. The 435 films, if you were to work that out to the average price of a movie ticket being like $13, do some math in your heads. 435 films times $13 on average. What do you think that comes out to? Just guess.
It's got to be north of 50 grand. No,
that is a little high.
A little high? 5 grand.
There you go.
Yeah,
it works out to
it was a zero off
to $5,655 a person seeing all these films in theaters over the last 8 years. So I can't think of necessarily a better way to spend, you know, almost $6,000, but
our podcast pay totally covers that, right? I mean, you know, the money we make off this totally offsets that cost.
Oh, yeah. All the money we're raking in by being one of the only not monetized podcasts out there.
Right. Yeah, I know. If only.
You make it all up at the merch table.
Yeah, exactly. But 435 episodes. If we do a little bit of math, so 435, if we multiply that by 90 minutes, well, no, we usually go like 75, right? So 75 minutes an episode times 4. I'm sorry, my math is totally wrong, guys. 390 times 75. That works out to just over 29,000 minutes of airtime that we've been doing this.
That's just podcast airtime, yeah?
That's just podcast airtime. Yep. Just over 29,000, which is a little crazy. If we do a little more math, 29,520 minutes, divide that by 60 for hours.
Almost 500 hours.
That works out to 492 hours of the Movie Bears podcast. Or if we divide that by 24, 20.5 days of airtime.
Wow.
So if you started right now, you wouldn't even be done in 2020.
No.
Ah,
Yep.
That's, yeah.
That's a lot of
That's a little crazy.
podcast listening with no sleep.
Speaking of podcast listening, we don't usually talk, numbers, subscribers, downloads, that kind of thing. It's been a while since we've done that, but I did some checking today. We've had 92,656 downloads through Apple Podcasts. We've had just over 12,000 downloads through Spotify, because we're newer on the Spotify platform. 110,000 views on YouTube, and 15,000 downloads on Stitcher, which brings us to a grand total of about 232,000 listens or views of an episode.
That's a lot of numbers.
It is. And, for a small little niche podcast like ours, I mean, let's be honest, we serve a limited community. It's not like we're, an NPR or radio sponsored podcast. We're just dudes doing what we want to do. Mm-hmm. That kind of blew my mind a little bit to see that figure today.
It's nice to know that we still, I mean, and we adore the folks that listen and the folks that contribute, and even participate right in the shows each week. So if we can somehow grow that, I mean, let's face it, we don't put a ton of marketing or effort into promotion, really. We just do the normal kind of stuff on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. And like you said, we're a niche podcast, but still those are pretty substantial numbers for something, as small as we do for a group of guys that does this just for fun.
I think we've said before that if it was literally just us talking to ourselves each week, that's fine, because that's our show. It's just us chatting. And the fact that we have people that are along for the ride with us, whether it be people that have, been on the show for short stretches or long stretches, or just the people that tune in live with us each week. Like, I'm absolutely blown away and humbled that other people have wanted to come along and do this with us, because again, this is just sort of us exploring one of our passions. So I'm glad that you're able to explore that with us.
yeah, and you said that you weren't NPR sponsored. I'll say you aren't NPR sponsored yet. So one day you could be chilling with Sarah Vowell or something. Who knows?
Guys,
before we go much further, we do need to talk about Casper mattresses.
Anniversary episode guest. Please welcome Merlin to the Movie Bears podcast. He's a little squirmy wormy, so I'm gonna put him down. But who knows, Chris? Maybe someday we'll end up there. But for now, you know what? I'm totally fine just hanging out with you guys and our listeners and doing our thing. Speaking of which, we've got several folks who are hanging out with us live. Hello and welcome. Glad to have you. We're going to jump into our re-review of Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters here in just a few minutes. And then we're going to dive into our Stall of Shame horrible movie picks a little bit later on. But before we do, we were looking back through the archives tonight. We started this show as an audio-only podcast. We used to record through Skype. Chris, I know you remember those days of waiting for that little Skype noise to come through. We've transitioned to several different platforms throughout the years, and we ended up doing an audio show as well as a video show. We do it live now. So it was interesting going back and looking at the very first video show we did. And that show, believe it or not, was episode 64, RoboCop. You guys remember reviewing RoboCop at all?
I remember reviewing RoboCop, but I think more importantly, I remember kind of that as a transition point for us, because the first 63 episodes were predominantly on Skype, and it was a very different energy and a very different atmosphere. I enjoyed doing them that way, but I enjoy doing it this way a lot more, because we've sort of forced ourselves to be extraneous and spontaneous with our conversations. Honestly, I remember back in the Skype days, we would, like, oh, stop, let's go back and fix it. That, and we would kind of force ourselves to sort of edit on the spot and go back and re-record something, or that didn't sound right, or let me go through that again. And now we just talk, we just chat, and I think we're better for it.
I would agree with that. It's funny, like going back and watching that first video episode we did, I stare at the camera like I have no soul. I'm like, welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris.
Like you're in front of the firing squad.
Right?
Yeah. And it seems like, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like we got the whole idea for the video thing. Because I think we started doing some like on the spot video reviews of movies. Brad and I did, I think the first one on our channel, if I'm not mistaken, is just Brad and I in the car on the way back from seeing The Grand Master.
Yeah.
Talking about the movie. And then Will, you also followed with another one, and I forget the name of the movie.
Was it something Declare War or something?
I Declare War.
I Declare War.
Or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then that must have sparked something in us, like, hey, let's all get together on a video tool and do this, just do this video thing, and give it a try. And here we are, freaking, 8 years, well, no, 7 years later, I guess, 6 or 7 years later.
Yeah.
After we switched from audio to video, still doing it through. We've gone through Skype. We went through some other tool that failed us. And then, well, it served us well for a while, and then it started failing us.
Let's see, it was Skype, Google Hangouts on Air.
Mm-hmm.
Then it was YouTube's own built-in thing. Then it was Lightstream.
Yep.
Now it's BeLive.
Yeah.
It's their fifth platform.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Only those nerds could build something that freaking works.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. Well, 8 years is a long time. I'm looking forward to being able to say that we've done this for a decade. But, if you round it up, we kind of have. Almost. To help us celebrate 8 years of the Movie Bears podcast, we had some listeners who wanted to share some comments with us for this episode. So we pulled a few of those together. We're going to share some of those now. And I'll go ahead and start with one. This is from Elizabeth from Michigan. And Elizabeth says, longtime listener, but first-time commenter. I've known Brad since high school. Hey, Elizabeth, good to see you. She says,
did you guys date?
We did not date. I dated one girl in high school. Her name was Ginger, and that was enough to cement things.
I knew you dated women, girls in high school. I just didn't know if she was one.
Anyway, Elizabeth says, my husband and I listen every week after we put the kids to bed. You guys' movie picks have been getting us through the quarantine. Thanks for that and for all the laughs over the years. Elizabeth, I had no idea that you were even listening to the show, so that's kind of fun to learn. Although now I'm like reviewing all the conversations we've ever had on the show in my head, and I'm like, oh, that's okay. But thank you so much, Elizabeth, to you and your husband for listening to the show for so long and being supporters. Great to see your comment. Thanks for submitting that.
So I know that some of the things we said, it's funny finding out after the fact that we have like old friends from high school and stuff listening to the show. And like you said, there's been some conversations that we've had like, oh my God, I don't know if I don't know if I want certain people hearing me say those things, but I guess we've all grown up a little bit since high school, right? And we can handle it.
Well, and it lets you reconnect with those people that you knew however many years ago in a very different way. I mean, I have a very similar situation. One of my friends from high school has fairly
Oh no!
Oh no!
This is like the 20th time we've lost Will this episode so far. Hopefully he'll.
Time to start looking for our 6th platform.
I know, right? Speaking of which, well, we'll hold that thought for Will, but yeah, it's definitely kind of crazy. Like, Chris, have you had anybody that listen to the show several years back and like reach out to you like, oh my gosh, you're doing a podcast?
No, but kind of the reverse, when like maybe I'll meet someone new and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard you on the podcast. And then I think that's pretty cool because like I'm, making connections with people that I haven't even met yet. So I think that's kind of great, and just shows you just how small our world can be at times.
And it is indeed pretty freaking crazy. Well, Will is back with us. Hey, Will, welcome back. I know the ire is rising, but we'll work through things best we can. Will, you were in the middle of a thought. I want to drop you off. Do you remember what you're saying?
Absolutely. I was saying that it's nice to be able to have those new relationships with people that you formed a relationship with in high school, come back to them later. One of my friends from high school has recently started listening to the show as a few months ago during quarantine. It's become a good friend of the show, Mary. And so it's really nice to have just, again, like a new version of that relationship develop through these conversations. People who knew me when I was a kid now know me as, the adult that I am now and the things that I love. And I don't know, that's just exciting. That's just exciting for me.
Well, especially with Mary, because Mary is awesome. Like, because of the podcast, we have now met Mary, and I hope we get to meet Mary and the family someday. She's amazing. So is her family. So, Will, thank you for introducing us to someone pretty awesome as a result of the show. We appreciate it. Chris, I believe you have a comment to share.
I do. This one's from John from New Zealand. I remember your first review. Loved The Hobbit. A lot was shot here, and it was awesome hearing bears go to the movies together. Was that really 8 years ago? Fuck, mates. Anyway, cheers to 8 years and hoping for many more. Keeping seeing movies and telling us what's what. So big up to our Kiwi fan base out there. And yeah, it has been 8 years, and The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings is shot in New Zealand, and we kind of love it for that. And I love every time Colbert goes to visit or talks about his love of Lord of the Rings, and it's always amazing for me.
Oh,
so
yeah,
what do you remember from 8 years ago?
The Hobbit movies, yes. It's amazing that he says like that he, maybe at the time for him it wasn't known that like bears will go to the movies together. It seems like a very common occurrence, right, for us here in the States. At least since
you guys hosted a movie group for a while, right?
At least, well,
yeah.
I mean, we've had organized movie groups, and now we don't at this moment. But well, of course, nobody probably does at this moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, even up to the beginning of this year, we really hadn't been part of like an organized movie going group for a while. Although it was always fun, it was always fun to get together a group and go to the movies and then maybe hang out afterwards and talk about it kind of on the spot instead of waiting for the next podcast when we get together. Because like Brad and I will go to the movies and we have a thing where like we generally won't talk to each other too much about the movie, like on the ride home. Like, did you like that? Yeah, I kind of did like that. Oh, did you like that? Nah, that sucked. But then we'll just kind of leave it, and kind of so that our thoughts and opinions are fresh for the show. So, but it's good to have a group of friends to do that with. So it's interesting that he said that. Hopefully by now he's found some friends maybe in New Zealand, some other bear friends to go to the movies with once in a while, maybe after COVID. Although I don't know what the situation is in New Zealand right now. So
I'm not sure.
I heard,
John,
I think just yesterday they declared it COVID free, and they've released all restrictions.
That's
so if you wanted a
They
bear
got down
group,
to 0. Yeah,
now's
New
the
Zealand
time.
is to be.
Well, John, if you're listening, I know there's other bears in New Zealand. If you don't already have a movie group, maybe now's a good time to start one. But thanks so much for writing in, John. We appreciate you very much. Thanks for listening. Jim, you've got a comment, I believe.
I do. This is Cisco from Tennessee. He says his best memory is receiving our heart-ons. So I guess he's a bottom then. I can't remember the episode. I can't believe I've been listening to you guys for 8 years. Time flies when you listen to movie reviews from the husky, hairy, huggable homos. Congratulations. And I was only kidding about the bottom joke, but it was laying there and I had to take it.
It was
receiving
there.
Our heart-ons is.
You had to take it?
Spoken like a top.
I mean, receiving heart-ons, that's, what can go wrong then? Nothing.
And just to be clear, he's saying heart-ons.
Heart-ons, yes. Can you explain the heart-on phenomenon, Brad?
Well, it's just essentially exactly what Will's doing on camera right now, making that heart shape. It's a heart on because it's a heart on screen. Get it? I believe Cisco Salgado had written into the show before with a comment. I don't remember the episode either, Cisco, but I know we always enjoy seeing comments from you pop up. So thank you so much for that love. And here's another heart on for you, whether you're a bottom or not.
There we go.
Enjoy.
There's 3 more or 4 more to receive.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, thank you for that, Cisco. Will, maybe you can close us out with our final comment.
Absolutely. I have a comment here from James from California. He says, I miss going to movies with the bears out here, but your show is almost just as good. I listen in my car on the way home from work and sometimes put you guys on when I'm doing yard work. Listen to your happiest season review while putting up Christmas lights, and it was nice getting into the spirit with you gents. I haven't listened to every single one of your 20,000 episodes, but I enjoy them every chance I get. Congrats on 8 years. Absolutely. I know it's hard right now, not being able to go and do movies with friends and being able to do those outings. For a lot of us, it wasn't just our entertainment, but it was one of our social lifelines. And right now we're cut off from that. All of us are cut off from that. And that sucks. But James, I'm really glad that you're able to put us on in the car, put us on doing the yard work, just let us hang out there with you and talk movies with you while you're going through your day to day.
Yeah. And James also, right. And it's the 20,000 episodes, as we said, is, like I said, it's really only 390 or so. And, if you have a spare 20 something days to listen from front to back, you can catch up easily, right? That's what we said with our numbers. Just 20 days back to back, no sleep. You just plug it into your ears when you're sleeping.
It's the Movie Bears Challenge.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I would say let us put you to sleep, but that's a horrible thing to say about a podcast.
No, but we appreciate folks like James who both listen to the show. I mean, put it on in the background when you're getting ready for Christmas. That's awesome. But the fact that he's interacting with us is a step beyond and something we really appreciate.
Agreed. Absolutely. Well, John, thank you so much for that message. We appreciate hearing from you and everybody who wrote into the show. We don't have time to feature all of the comments, but just a big, warm, soft bear hug from all of us to you. Thank you, listeners, for being part of this amazing 8-year journey, and hope you'll stick around as we hit year 9, year 10, year 15. Guys, final question before we move on to our movie re-review for the week. Do you think we'll still be doing this in the year 2025?
Oof, that's a rough question.
The only way that I don't see that happening is if the vaccines fail and then movie theaters just go out of business entirely.
Or the whole movie industry, right? Or the next virus, Corona 20, whatever the heck the next one is.
We're not willing that into existence.
Yeah, well, wipes out, all humankind.
Look, the other day, Disney just announced 4 billion new Star Wars and Avengers and original and all sorts of different franchises that they own movies. So even if we do nothing but review the Disney movies that are going to be made out there, I think we've at least got a few years of content. And that's not even counting all of the wonderful stuff that's being made that Disney doesn't own.
Wait, there are things that Disney doesn't own?
For now.
Sure not.
For now. When Disney purchases A24, it's over.
Oh.
Oh no! I hope that never happens.
Or Annapurna.
Please no. Please no. Yeah. Well, Jim, Will, Chris Lopez, sexy voice of the Movie Bears podcast. I count my blessings to have enjoyed this podcast with all of you over the last 8 years. Chris, so glad that you could join us for this very, very special episode. It's definitely a treat to kind of share and celebrate with you. Guys, how do we feel about getting into our re-review of the possibly worst movie we've ever reviewed on the Movie Bears podcast? Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. I'm ready.
All right. Awesome.
I didn't rewatch this movie for nothing.
Well, just to preface this, because we reviewed this film on the Movie Bears podcast previously, 8 years ago, a little less than 8 years ago, I guess, because it was like episode 6. We're going to be talking about Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, and there's going to be spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie at this point, it's up to you whether or not you want to bother. But we just thought this would be a fun discussion to revisit. So, like usual, we'll do a little bit of setup for this film, but then we're just going to jump in and talk about it. So, stick around for spoilers at your own peril. But all that said, let's go to Jim real quick. Hey, Jim. Yeah, what?
Here's one thing I will say about spoilers for this movie. The name of the movie is Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. And there is a Hansel and Gretel in this movie, and they hunt witches. And beyond that, I don't know how you could even spoil anything in this movie, really. There's not much in there to spoil. Maybe one thing. And so I don't know. We're gonna kind of throw the spoiler. We're gonna rip the spoiler handle off and just hurtle down the hill this time.
Yeah. Well, better to be safe than sorry, I guess, in giving that spoiler warning. But thank you for pointing that out, babe. All right. Well, here we go. Our discussion of Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters, Part 2. Not really Part 2. I added that in for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right, so Will, I know we're having some technical difficulties tonight. No worries if it kicks you out again during this. But would you mind giving us just a brief setup of this film? What the fuck is it?
Well, first of all, Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters came out in 2013, and this is the movie that we've sort of historically brought up whenever we talk about, like, oh, at least it's not Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. In fact, I think that in some ways maybe its legacy for us is even more notorious than even our experiences watching the film back then, or probably anyone else. We've probably talked about this movie more than anyone else in the world the last 8 years. The story is about Jeremy Renner and Gemma Arterton are Hansel and Gretel. They survived the witch in the House of Candy, but now they've grown up and they are badass edgelord witch hunters. Famke Janssen comes to town and she overacts the place until it's time for Hansel and Gretel to form up with some steampunk weapons, some unlikely allies, and punch a bunch of women in the face. There are a lot of things I dislike about this movie, and I did rewatch it for the show. And some of the things that I disliked the most were, this is a movie where all of the women get their asses kicked or pose in leather. That's really what their jobs are in this. This is this is a very misogynistic film on top of everything else. CGI is not great. It sets up a lot of maybe interesting ideas that doesn't do anything with them. Like they have all these like cool technology things that are like sort of steampunk inspired, but they end up just being like, machine guns and rifles, but just like with bronze paint on them. Like they don't do anything cool with them outside of like trying to make them look different. Famke Janssen seems like she's the only one having fun in this, and she is not in the same film as the others. She's just going so over the top. I don't know. There's not a lot to like here. But at the same time, there is one thing I did appreciate a lot rewatching this. The opening sequence with them as kids was actually kind of good. Like, not great, but like if that was a short film that was just like, them and then, them killing the witch at the end in the house, like kind of the traditional story, that kind of worked. I didn't love all of the, all of that, but it worked. And then then we get to our opening credits and we have the rest of our movie and things go downhill very, very quickly. So this one's as bad as I remember it. All the things that sucked then still suck now. Not the worst movie we've seen. We're going to be getting to some of those, but definitely one that stands out because I think it was one of the first bad movies that we saw as a group. And, you never forget your first.
Well, congratulations to Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters for being the first. How about for you guys, Jim or Chris? Like seeing this film, was it maybe as bad as you thought it might be?
Jim, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I think you're on mute, babe.
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Suddenly, it's a Zoom meeting.
Chris, I'm going to let you go first on this one as the guest.
Oh, okay, sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. Like revisiting this movie, it was a different experience because like I set my brain into knowing that it was going to be a bad movie, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to try and have fun with it. And there are definitely some cool, fun parts, but the movie actively tries to like remind you of how bad it is. And how just how paper thin all the characters are, and just like this too cool, I'm such a badass attitude. That is like the thing that turns me off the worst. And if you're gonna be style over substance, that can be okay. Like I honestly love watching The Cell, and I love watching Speed Racer, which undeniably are way more style than any substance. But if your style is going to be, I wear a black jacket and I have these cool weapons and I can shoot people in the face, like, you lost me. Like, that's not going to be memorable. And yeah, it's not going to carry a movie. So that was my attitude. I did love that Gretel eventually finds a cute troll boyfriend / manservant. Uh, but that might be the highlight of the film for me. So yeah, it at least knows what it is. It doesn't try to be anything different. Like when the intern witch hunter asks like where they got their weapons from, and they just totally ignore him and gloss it over in the film. That's just kind of like, okay, I get it, guys. You don't even care about like any sort of backstory or any sort of explanation. Fine. And so like I appreciate that, even if it still bugs me. So yeah, that was just kind of like I tried, but still pretty bad.
So, Chris, this was an MTV Productions film. You mentioned the leather jackets and the guns and kicking ass. Would you say it lives up to its MTV parent?
I don't even know what MTV is anymore. Like, if it was going to be MTV, like it would be like a 16-year-old with a baby or something now at this point. I don't know.
I don't even know what they have on MTV anymore.
Spoiler, MTV doesn't know what MTV is anymore.
Yeah.
So,
like, the attitude just reminded me of like 1990s Image Comics, anti-heroes, and just being badass for badass sake.
All right. Well, very, very cool to hear your thoughts again on this film. We have another special guest with us on the show this week, Peter Griffin. Dave, hey. Welcome.
Hey.
Glad to have you with us on the show. Hello and welcome. Jim, how about you? How did this hold up or not?
Yeah, I went into it with the same mindset, I think, as Chris, thinking, yeah, well, I mean, we made it a popcorn movie last night, so that was fun. We went into our projector room, we got it set up on the big screen, got some popcorn in buckets, and sat there and watched a movie like, oh, this is going to be great. Maybe I won't fall asleep like I did the first time I watched it. And I'll be honest, like kind of like Will was saying, like the opening sequence and maybe the first 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes of the movie, I'm like, okay, they're developing something here, right? They're trying to develop a story. And then at some point in the movie, they kind of like stopped. They just like, that's it. That's all the story development we're going to do. We have witch hunters on this side. We have bad witches on this side. And we're just going to, I'm a gory action movie director. And that's what I'm going to shove down your throats for the next, hour and 10 minutes. And that's kind of what we got. And that's too bad. And for people who are fans of like a constant stream of that, just, like stabbing and dark blood effects and, shooting people's heads off and cutting people's heads off constantly, and all that kind of bombastic, punch you in your face action, they're maybe going to love that. But after a few minutes of that, I get tired, especially if it's not really in service of a story that's interesting to me. We know they're going to clash. We know they're witch hunters. They're probably going to kill all the witches. Will brought up an interesting point about like, if you kind of back off at the 10,000 foot level and see this as like, it's basically there's a lot of violence and degradation of women. Especially if you view these witches, who many if not all of them are portrayed by women actors. If you view it in that light, I don't know what the director's views are. I can't pretend to know that, but that's what it comes across as on the screen. I don't remember if we called this out when we first reviewed the movie. Maybe we did. I know that I think sensitivities are different now than they were then. And so viewing this through a 2020 lens, I think is different. Not to say that it's better or worse, because those things are there and they're definitely cringy, to say the least, to watch unfold. But yeah, I think for the first 20 minutes, I was like, hey, this movie isn't as bad as I remember it being. This is going to be kind of cool. And then I'm like, oh yeah, now I remember why this sucked, because it just kind of bludgeoned me to sleep. at some point in the movie. So, yeah, I looked up the director's credit, and he does. I haven't seen any of them, but he does those Dead Snow movies. Is that what they're
Yes.
called?
And
Like-
they're really good. They're over the top campy movies about these like zombie Nazis that attack this like these people at this cabin at a ski resort. It's like it's over the top, but it like works super well there.
Is that because like does that have anything to do with the like pseudo political lens of like it's okay to like kill a bunch of like zombie Nazis, but not a bunch of witch women? Like, do you think that, I mean, let's think about that. Is that like really a thing?
I mean, it could be a thing, but
Oh no!
Sorry, Will. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. Brad, I want to hear what you think.
That's all right. Will's back. Actually, we'll have Will finish this thought.
yeah,
Will.
yeah. So I think that I mean that lens is certainly there, but I think that it's more a matter of like what serves the material, right? In this case, the Dead Snow films, they seem like he was having fun making those, enough so that he made a second one and changed the tone for the second one and made it a little campier than the first one, which is a little more serious. Whereas if you really think about this movie when it was made, this was on the heels by a few years of the Kate Beckinsale Underworld movies, and you can see that this was definitely a victim of chasing a trend. That someone in some studio said, "I want to make Underworld." Well, you can't make Underworld; they're making Underworld. Okay, well, what's available in the public domain? Hansel and Gretel. Can we make this Underworld? Yeah, sure. Let's make that work. So I think that that's a big part of it. But then you put the socio-political inside of it. This is a movie that wanted to recognize the fact that, well, really, witchcraft, was just a reason to like persecute women who were different, and as a way to to hold them back and to enact violence upon them. The movie both acknowledges that and then just decides to like roll with it and perpetuate it. So I think that it's not a matter of it's okay to do it here and it's not okay to do it there. I think it's a matter of they didn't know what story they were trying to tell, what message they were trying to tell. And because of that, they just decided, well, fuck it, we're here. Let's punch them in the face and say bitch a bunch. And that's what they end up doing. So, yeah, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Could they have made a better version of this movie? Yeah, there was a good, or at least a better Gretel and Hansel movie that came out this year. Now, granted, they weren't witch hunters, but like you can do a modern retelling of this story and make it work. This just wasn't it.
Okay, Brad, you're up.
Oh gosh, the pressure. I agree that I think revisiting this film for the first little while, I was starting to get into it. I was like, I forgot how cool the setup for this really is. Like, man, Hansel and Gretel had a life after the Grimm fairy tale or whatever its origin is. And they've gone on to become these badass witch hunters, because this terrible experience they had as kids. I really liked the animated sequence at the beginning of the film after they kill the witch and then it like tells the story.
The
right.
The title credits. Yeah.
Really, really cool. I loved the design of the witch's candy house. But I agree with you guys. It's like once we kind of get past that, it all starts to fall apart very, very quickly. I was also reminded that Jeremy Renner used to be like a big thing in movies. I don't know if he still is anymore.
What happened?
Hawkeye, Avengers, and Mission Impossible. But there's this scene where he like has to strip down and get naked to get into a pool of healing water with this girl. And, we get to see her ass. We get to see her tits. Do we get to see Jeremy Renner's butt? Nope. Do we get to see his peen? Nope. Do we even get to see him bare-chested for like a split second? I guess. Very unfair. Very unfair. But I mean, and again, MTV production, what the fuck do you expect? this movie wasn't great. I mean, I love Famke Jensen. Great to see her pop up here. I actually forgot that she was the main witch in this film. So I was like, oh my God, Jean Grey is an evil witch. This is awesome. But then like it very quickly wasn't awesome. Do I still think this is one of the worst movies we've ever reviewed on this show? And Peter Griffin, I see your note in the chat. He says, I'm a little lost. It sounds like you guys are maybe talking about Jaws, ? We're actually talking about a little film from 2013 called Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. Go watch a trailer, if nothing else, PETA, and tell us what you think about how that movie looks if you haven't seen it. But yeah, this movie, I think I feel very justified in sort of the callbacks that we have made over the years around, well, at least it's not Hansel and Gretel, Witch Hunters. So having given it a second chance, I don't feel so bad about ragging on this movie all the time now.
No, that's one thing we did not do is we did not go back and listen to our review. At least I didn't of that film. That might have been fun for this show if we had time. But I don't even remember what. I remember not liking it very much, but I don't remember how much I expressed my dislike of the movie during that review. But I will go back and watch or listen to that one. I did want to talk about, like, even though I enjoyed like the first part of the movie, there's kind of a central mystery to this thing about, why the father led the children out into the forest in the very first scene and kind of like let them be taken by the witch, or almost led them to the witch. And for the whole like first 35 minutes of the movie, I'm like, are they ever going to get back to that? Are they? And then finally, it seemed to me anyway, they always come back to the mother, right? They always come back to, that mother is another witch. And that was a little, again, I think that was just like the poor laying out of that mystery and that story was indicative of this movie's problems. It really wasn't interested in that story. It knew it had to have something, but it didn't really do its service very well.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes.